What's going on, everybody? Mike Nicastro, Jordan York, you're locked into another episode of the Sick Podcast. Steelers crazy. We're really excited to bring on a guest who can tell you a lot about the Buffalo Bills, of course, as the Steelers head into Buffalo as a 14 and a half point underdog this Sunday. Yes, it still does not feel real. Jordan, does your life feel real right now? You're decked out in Pittsburgh gear. Steelers hat, Pirates jersey, terrible towel behind you.
Yeah, I'm just living the Yinzer dream. Everything is good. The temperature here 70 degrees about, and then tomorrow it will be 45, 50. So that's welcome to Pittsburgh.
Everything good except the Steelers being 1-3, of course. We're all sick about that.
I didn't want to say anything, but you just pulled it out of me.
I pulled it out of you. I'm sorry. Let's bring on a guy who will talk about Buffalo Bills, what to expect, of course, this Sunday as the Steelers head into a really, really tough environment. When we come back, it's Nate Geary.
Up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Harris Smith shields. Flacco Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Cool beans. You can hear him on WGR 550. And make sure you follow him on Twitter while you're at it, at Nate Geary Sports. He's the pregame and halftime show host, the Buffalo Bills on WGR 550. It is none other than Nate Geary. Hi, Nate.
Fellas, how we doing?
Yeah. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. You know, Northeast weather, I don't got to explain it to you guys. It sounds like you guys are having a little bit nicer weather than us, but it's fall around these parts.
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills weather, man. It's Pittsburgh Steelers weather, that's for sure. So, I got to start off by asking, Nate, have you ever jumped through a table, and why do you regret that decision?
No regrets. But, yeah, I was a season ticket holder. It would be 2012 to 2015, 2011 to 2015, maybe even 2020 to 2015. And in my time as a season ticket holder before I, did stuff on game days with GR, I would have gone through many a table in my day. Yeah.
Love it. Nothing but respect on this end. In all honesty, we've seen some pretty crazy tailgates as well. Jordan, I could say that probably best to keep it PG on this podcast at the current moment. All right, Nate, let's get into the game a little bit. The Bills are 14.5 point favorites currently as we stand over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not sure if Jordan's going to take a sharp bet on that action to get that number to go down as we get closer to Sunday. However, the Steelers haven't been this big of an underdog since about World War II. So, Nate, I'm expecting the Bills to just kind of mosey in, not care about getting any sleep the night before, walk in the park, right?
Yeah, listen, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, they do a pretty good job of sort of straddling that company line of like the next game's the most important game because it's the next game. Josh Allen was on his podcast with Kyle Brandt this week, and Brandt kind of mentioned, oh well, Kansas City, the big game next week, and he's like, hand on God, didn't even know we played Kansas City. I don't know if I believe that, but Josh plays a good he plays a good poker game. But I would say 14.5 points is absurd for the NFL. Part of that is rookie quarterback making his first NFL start in Buffalo. It's going to be a beautiful Sunday afternoon, good fall weather here in Western New York. If I was going to bet the sort of the over under and sort of bet the spread in this game, which I'll probably stay away from entirely, I would probably bet that Pittsburgh covers. And the only reason being is I think the Bills right now are sort of also teetering the line of having a bunch of guys back, but also kind of recognizing this franchise, at least in the Sean McDermott era, does not rush guys with soft tissue injuries back. Jordan Phillips was a limited participant in practice. It'd be really great to get him back. He has been dynamic in his return to Buffalo. Played here 2 years ago, signed that big contract to go to Arizona. Didn't really hear from him a lot. And in his first 3 games this year, it was a thing of beauty seeing him back in a Bills uniform. Ed Oliver, who was kind of maybe most tabbed to have the big outbreak season for the Bills, has been out since week 1 with an ankle injury. He's projected to potentially be back this way. We know Jordan Poyer earlier this week had an injury, a rib injury that he sustained late in that football game last week, and the game-winning interception in the end zone against the Ravens. So we'll see if he gets back. Dawson Knox has been banged up. This is a really banged-up football team that is trying to get healthy and sustainably healthy. So I think you can see a lot of guys that are kind of like questionable or probable. I know that designation's gone in the NFL, but would be probable. Probably don't play this week. And it's not just to say like, well, we know we're going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They stink. We don't have to put our best players out there. I think really they want to make sure that this team is 100% healthy as it moves into December and hopefully January and February. So with that said, I suspect this game will be closer than Vegas odds are currently placing it at.
Talked about Dawson Knox, one of those big-time offensive weapons for Josh Allen. Tell us a little bit about Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie. How are they trending?
So Gabe Davis has been kind of dealing with and playing through an ankle injury. You could see it's affecting him. He's not 100%. He's this team's most dynamic deep ball threat, and they've missed that, I think, pretty badly over the first 3 weeks of the season. Not having that, the offense has really scaled back a lot of what they do down the field and have just the way the teams are defending him with the two deep safety. Right now, they don't have that take off the top of the defense guy, and it's definitely affecting the way defenses are defending the Bills. And as for Dawson Knox dealing with a hamstring and foot injury, the foot injury has been something he's been sort of dealing with since the start of the season. Hamstring is new to last week. I think he'll be a game time decision. I would not be surprised if you do not see Dawson Knox go. But in terms of both of those guys and how important they are to the offense, I think, right now the Bills offense is still top 5 in terms of efficiency and top 5 in a lot of the major, volume metrics. But this is an offense that went into the season thinking that they were going to use the running back more in the passing game. And they drafted James Cook in the second round, and they have not really either A, trusted him, or B, integrated him in a way that I think they probably planned on doing early in the season. They've been really exclusively throwing to Devin Singletary, who is a nice player, just kind of lacks that explosiveness after the catch. So there's not a lot of yards after catch when Devin Singletary gets his hands on the ball, and their big primary deep threat in Gabriel Davis. So this offense has had to sort of maneuver around and find ways. Nothing's been easy for them, and I don't suspect it'll be any easier this week. I know no TJ Watt, and I know the record without TJ Watt in the lineup and so on and so forth, but there's a lot of respect from this franchise, from Josh Allen, from Ken Dorsey, for how good of a coach Mike Tomlin is and just how dynamic Minkah Fitzpatrick is in that defensive backfield.
You are watching the Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy, of course, brought to you by Sick Podcast over here. Follow us on YouTube, Sick Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SickPod. Steelers, that's Jordan. I'm Mike. This is Nate Geary, great pregame and halftime show host on WGR 550 up there in Buffalo. Nate, certainly something I got to ask about is that game last season. First game of the year, Steelers come into Buffalo, pull off a major upset, sort of what they're looking to do this Sunday. What resonates with you from that game?
A few things. Listen, I think the Steelers had the luxury of catching the Bills in week 1. There wasn't a lot of film on what the Steelers were going to do defensively. And I heard Josh talk about it this week, just saying going into that game, we really kind of thought that the Steelers were going to blitz the heck out of us. We'd prepared for that. And they didn't. And they dropped back in that 2-deep zone, and they let TJ Watt sort of win one-on-one battles. And in that game, after that game really kind of forced the Bills to take a look in the mirror. A lot of shuffling on the offensive line. Darrell Williams in that game, who started the season at right tackle, got bumped down to guard. We saw their rookie third-round pick, Spencer Brown, kind of slotted to that right tackle position for the remainder of the season. But all in all, what that matchup last year forced the Bills to do is kind of take a look in the mirror at what they do offensively, how they line up. The 5 wide sets, they really were not able to protect Josh the way that they wanted to protect him. And I think, that was really sort of the beginning of seeing teams how they wanted to. It was the blueprint for how to slow down the Bills offense, and throwing up those 2 high safeties and forcing the Bills to just kind of methodically dink and dunk you down the field. Now, the Bills have been able to do that. In that Miami game 2 weeks ago, they ran 90 plays. Josh Allen threw 63 times and threw for 400 yards. But they got slowed down when it came down to crunch time in the red zone. A lot of that, just their inability to run the football effectively. And that has sort of been the maintaining and sort of consistent issue with this Bills offense, is just finding efficient ways to run the football when it's not Josh Allen. And right now, Josh Allen accounts for about 85% of this Buffalo Bills offensive output, and it's not a sustainable percentage. That has to be way closer to 75% if this Bills offense is going to be dynamic going into January. Because if you're asking Josh Allen to run the ball 10, 15 times a game and throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, I don't care how big and how strong he is, that's going to wear you down when it comes down to crunch time at the end of the year.
Josh Allen, obviously a first-round pick, was probably gone above and beyond anybody's expectations. This guy's an MVP candidate, going to be one of the best players in the league for a long time. Steelers are hoping that their first-round pick quarterback, Kenny Pickett, can sort of get to the same level at some point. I heard a quote from Von Miller. I don't know, it might have been yesterday or early today. He's a smart guy. He's a good leader. He was talking about Kenny Pickett saying, I know we're underdogs. And Von's like, what do you mean? Nobody's calling you guys underdogs, playing that leadership card really well. What has Von brought to this team, man, so far? Obviously, we admire him from afar generally as not only a guy on the field, but as I mentioned, just a leader, just a dude on anybody's roster.
I think a lot of people here in Buffalo, if you ask any media member, especially guys in the beat that are there at practice every day and were there for OTAs and mini camps, and as you got into mandatory mini camp and training camp, there was just this constant desire to be a role model for the young players at his position on this team. And this is listen, Brandon Beane has invested more assets into their defensive line than just about any position group, and particularly at defensive end, than any position group on the team. I mean, you've got a second-round pick in AJ Epinesa, a second-round pick in Boogie Basham, formerly a first-round pick that they brought back in Shaq Lawson, and obviously Gregory Rousseau, who is really blossoming into the player that I think the Bills fans had secretly hoped he would be when they drafted him late in the first round last year, but has fully bought into everything that Von Miller has sort of worked with him on. And I think you're starting to see strides in Boogie Basham's game. And right now, the Bills have 3 of the top 10 in terms of pass rush efficiency players in the league in terms of pressure rate per snap in the league. Boogie Basham was number 1 going into last week. I haven't seen the updated numbers. Boogie Basham was 1, Von Miller was 2, and Gregory Rousseau was 7. So if that doesn't tell you that the return on investment they're getting from the edge position, I don't know what does. And a lot of that has to be contributed to Von Miller coming in and really being a guy that the young guys in that room have really wanted to just adopt and taken all the information like a sponge. And it's not like Von Miller walked in here and said, I'm Von Miller, see you on Sunday. He really bought in. He's got his pass rush academy that he runs every year, his pass rush summit. He had every defensive end on the roster at the summit. And I think that was a huge learning experience. And right now through 4 games, Gregory Rousseau has 4 sacks through 4 games. Boogie Basham has 2.5 sacks through 4 games. AJ Epinesa's really started to take strides at a position where he went through a complete body transformation, lost 35 pounds after his rookie season. This team really wanted him to play at a much lighter weight than he was at Iowa, and he's learning how to play with his body and skill set. Gregory Rousseau, I think by the end of the year, this year, you could be looking at a guy that you're saying, is this a top 10 player at the defensive end position in football? And if that's the case, you got Von Miller, who is one of the best speed edge rushers in the league, combined with Greg Rousseau, who I think ended the last year as a top 10 edge run defender. If he can add the things that we've seen early on the season and scale that for the rest of the year, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with for a very long time. He's 21 years old.
No question about it. Steelers had 3 turnovers on Sunday, Jordan. I'm going to add to that. I'm going to turn it over to you right now. I'm going to take Nate's advice. I'm going right to the sports book, betting the Steelers.
Sounds good. Yeah, so Mike had to run, so I'll finish out the show. But yeah, I mean, it's good to get insight. We like bringing other guys on. We're all fans of the NFL. We're all fans of football. I respect Bills Mafia. I watch a lot of NFL films, so that's why we had to ask you about the tradition of the tailgating. But moving on to the game, if you're around the team, what is the Bills' biggest weakness, if they had one, that you would say?
Right now, defensively, there's not a lot you can look at. I mean, they stopped the run with the best of them. They really, since Sean McDermott's got here in 2017, I think I saw some statistics. They're the best pass defense in football in almost every major category. Passing touchdowns given up, yards per game given up, volume yards, yards per attempt, yards per completion. In the NFL, whether you're a rookie quarterback or a veteran quarterback, they've really done a good job. And now they've got the complement of having a legit pass rush, something they've been chasing for the last couple of years. Obviously, Micah Hyde is really kind of hurting that, but I thought Damar Hamlin has stepped in really admirably, has played very well alongside
guy.
Jordan.
University of Pittsburgh.
and Dane Jackson, another guy, that another University of Pitt guy.
I'm glad he's doing well. That was really, really tough to watch. I was watching that game live and just obviously watching him in college, and I root for these guys in the NFL, and that was just oh man, it was. But I'm glad to see he's doing well.
He's been such a good story here in Buffalo too. I mean, a 7th round pick and a guy that, I don't think had a lot of expectations on him, but little by little worked. And I mean, he found himself in a position to start this year. And if Tre'Davious White was hurt, or if Tre'Davious White was healthy, Dane Jackson would be this team's number 2 corner over a 1st round pick. That was highly, touted, and Kyrie Elam, and the 6th rounder, Christian Benford, who's been out with a hand injury, has been the talk of training camp. And I do think Dane Jackson would end up starting over him. But if I were to point to one weakness, I think it would probably be on the offensive side of the ball, the Bills running game. And the Bills haven't necessarily been like, we're going to run the ball 30 times regardless of the success rate. We saw against the Miami Dolphins, they ran 90 offensive plays. They dropped back to pass 72 times, and attempting a throw on 63 of those 74 dropbacks, I think it was. So this is a team that will throw the football regardless of whether or not they're, having success on the ground, but they want to run the football. They just haven't really found that success. And, I think the Dolphins had some success also blitzing the Bills, getting after them and forcing them down to their hot route and sort of forcing them to dink and dunk you and be perfect down the field. So I think if there's a weakness, it's, kind of loading the secondary and forcing the Bills and giving them looks to run the football, because they haven't even really been able to take advantage of light run boxes either. So I think if I'm the Steelers, if I'm Brian Flores, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm looking at this situation and I'm saying, we're not blitzing this team. We're going to drop 7. We're going to drop 8 back in coverage, and we're going to give you run looks and force you to try to beat us on the ground, because they just really have not proven to anybody that they've been able to do that consistently.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's something that the Steelers are still trying to find. And, it's still early in the season, but it's just like when you're like covering it and, being a part of it, as I'm sure you can relate, it already feels like it's like we're already ready for the playoffs, because it's just like, and you're like, holy crap, it's only week 4. So we'll move on. Just give me some of your key matchups that you're looking forward to in the game, maybe one on the offense and one on the defensive side of the ball.
I'll start for the Bills offensively, and it's going to be right in the middle. Cam Hayward is still one of the best interior defensive linemen in all of football. And this is an interior part of the Bills offensive line right now that's still trying to find its way. They went out this offseason, signed Roger Saffold. Mixed reviews. I mean, he was a Pro Bowler last season, but he's 34 years old. I don't think anybody was expecting him to walk in here to be an all-pro, Pro Bowl type level player, but they wanted somebody to solidify the left side. I think he's been good, not great. And Ryan Bates, the guy that they matched their RFA tender, the Chicago Bears this offseason, tendered him, and the Bills matched it as an RFA. And the move to to right guard from left guard last season, coming in for an injured Ike Butker, has been okay, but he is not a power, downhill run blocker by any means. And really neither is anybody on this offensive line. So that matchup with Cam Hayward and this Bills interior offensive line, whether he lines up on the right side or the left side, and the tackle position right now, Spencer Brown, the Bills 3rd round pick, really, I mean, as athletic of an offensive lineman as you're going to get in the NFL, has struggled against power bull rush. So if they line up Cam Hayward on the outside and put him over a guy like a young player like Spencer Brown, that could be a big matchup this week. And on the other side, I think it's right now, it's hard to look at anybody on that defense and not immediately look to Minkah Fitzpatrick, who I still think is the premier safety in all of football. And obviously he's better when you've got TJ Watt on the front end. So, he's kind of a little bit more free and isn't being cued on as much, because, I mean, let's be honest, offenses are the first guy they're circling is TJ Watt. And I mean, for good reason. He's the best pass rusher in football. I think he's one of the best defensive players in football. And then you throw Minkah Fitzpatrick back there in the secondary. So whether he's lined up over the Bills tight end, whether that is a healthy Dawson Knox, we'll have to see come Sunday, or a guy that, maybe you should familiarize yourself with in Quentin Morris, a MAC guy, somebody that really worked hard this offseason, gained the respect of his teammates, and made the roster as this team's number 2 tight end. I think that matchup could loom large, and we'll kind of see what Fitzpatrick does, because I know he roams around. He'll play the slot position. He'll line up over the Bills, Isaiah McKenzie. He'll line up over wide receivers, fullbacks, running backs, you name it. And I also wouldn't be surprised at all to see if Minkah Fitzpatrick is asked to be a box defender and almost as like a spy against Josh Allen if Allen gets going in the run game.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with it. And like I said, I know how strong of a team you guys got. And obviously Josh Allen is basically up for MVP. So we always like to end with 2 sentences. So you just, it's like a play on words. So the Bills will win if you can simplify it, or you can, give a long thing all about how you feel.
Okay. The Bills will win. The Bills will win if they can finally establish their running attack and get going on the ground and right, and get Devin Singletary involved. Maybe try to find a way to get their rookie James Cook involved as well.
Do you think they can do it is the question. Do you have faith?
Cam Hayward's going to be a tough matchup, man. He just is. So if you're telling me, are they going to run for 100 yards on the ground and not have Josh Allen play a big piece? I don't know, but I think they owe it to themselves to, and I know they've really not given James Cook many opportunities, and in the opportunities he's had, he's not made plays. He's either had drops, he had a fumble on his first carry, so I think they wanted to ease him in. The easing in hasn't gone well, but if they can't figure things out, they've got Duke Johnson waiting on the practice squad. They got to make a move if Zach Moss or James Cook can't seem to step up. And the move would be to move Zach Moss, put him on waivers and see if he clears and you can get it back to the practice squad. But both of those guys have really been ineffective. So getting those guys going, I think, would be a big key in this game.
Yeah, you would think now, because that's what the Steelers' dilemma was this year, with Benny Snell, and then we ended up signing Jaylen Warren, and he made the 53-man roster, is having such a solid RB2 in the NFL nowadays is just such a big, I just feel that it's neglected a lot of the times.
It is.
Because we really didn't even know. You should definitely know who that is, because Najee, for us, he could handle the bulk of the carries and say, yeah, I want to do it. But when you're banged up, you're banged up. And that's just the way it goes. But so we'll end on this one. The Steelers will win if maybe that man right there.
I would think, but I might even go to the other side of the football. I would say the Steelers will win if they're able to get off the field on third down. Right now, the Bills are the number 1 team on in terms of conversions on third down in football. In week 1, they went 9 of 10. And they're very aggressive on fourth down. So if you can keep the Bills in the third and medium, third and long range, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and get off the field, they'll punt the football away. But if you give the Bills 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, you get a stop, and they've got a 4th and 1, 4th and 2 situation, short of them being in the shadow of their own goalposts. The Bills are the most aggressive team on fourth down in all of football, so they will go in a lot of those situations. But get off the field on third down, and you'll have a good chance of beating the Bills on Sunday.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The only reason why I say that I think the Steelers are going to win, not just because I'm a Steelers fan, is simply because they get up for games like these. We lose to the Jets, we lose to, the Browns, and then we'll beat the Bills, just like we did when we went in there. That's just how the Steelers are. Being a Steelers fan, I don't know what it is to watch a blowout. Give me 43-17 or something. It just doesn't happen. It's heart attack city every week, but that's the football fan. That's just the passion in us. But Nate, we really appreciate you coming on. If you want to tell the people, just give a drop for yourself where they can check out your work. And, we're really fortunate, and your expertise was great, man. And you're watching the Sick podcast. And after he gives his little hoorah, just make sure you subscribe and check us out. Steelers Crazy. Yeah,
you can follow me on Twitter at Nate Geary Sports. I also do a cool little podcast every Friday night at 9 p.m. It's live. I tweet out the link every Friday night. It's called Food for Thought. It's I would like to think, the only podcast that has successfully inverted football and food together in one podcast.
Sign me up. That sounds amazing.
It's a unique experience, very niche. But if you're into that kind of thing, you can.
You do tailgate food,
we do a little bit of everything. You guys have the Bills win if we try to compare. We call it a food simile. We compare how we're feeling about the Bills' upcoming game to a food or a food experience.
Oh man,
which is really cool. So we've been doing it for over a year, and we've not run out of creativity yet. So until that day comes, it's a really cool, neat podcast. If you want to check us out, against at the Buffalo Rumblings Podcast Network. We also do live video as well. So check us out at buffalorumblings.com.
Definitely. And hey, we might be foes on Sunday, but we're fans, and we appreciate having you. NFL fall time, it's the greatest time in the world. Can't tell me otherwise, man. Thanks for having you. This is the Steelers Crazy Podcast, a sick production. IMJY might had to scoot out for a little bit, but he'll be back next week for the Chris Wormley and Friends show. We have giveaways and more. It's just going to be a great month. So we're excited to bring on a lot of people just to break down. And then we have Chris Wormley himself, who's in the locker room, and some of his friends. So make sure you subscribe, follow us, all that good stuff at the Sick Podcast. Steelers, here we go, Steelers. It's Kenny Pickett time. Start building the statue. Sammy, play that thing, and we'll see you next week.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.